Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to one more of the webinars in the Jamnabai Narsee Education Series. As you know well by now, these were conceptualized by our trustee, Mr. Suraj Jairaj, with tremendous foresight to cater initially to the needs of our parent community during this period of lockdown. I use the word initially deliberately because we realize from the kind of feedback we have been receiving that the reach has been far and wide. So you've been fueling us with your appreciative comments and suggestions, and we are very happy to once more bring you something very interesting and exciting this evening. It's the 3 Jamnabai Narsee schools under the umbrella of the Narsee Monji Educational Trust that are very excited about bringing these webinars to the safety of your homes during this period of the lockdown. Usually, managing emotions, dealing with relationship hurdles are challenging by themselves. And during this period of the lockdown, maybe some of us find them a little more challenging than usual. We have, for your benefit this evening, Ellaeenah joining us, who is going to help you navigate these emotional waters with some ease. Ellaeenah, or better known to those of us who were privileged to have been taught by her. I'm smiling a little harder than I usually do because this is my teacher from my school days who has moved on from the role that she played with such ease and panache, has moved on to discovering her soul's purpose by being the most fantastic spiritual mentor and counselor one could ask for. She's a spiritual mentor and counselor in the field of emotional management and inner child resolution. Bach flower practitioner, teacher of meditation. She's also a health facilitator. Her aim is to help free all persons, whether they are children, teenagers, or adults, from patterns of stressful living that cause conflict and strain in relationships and human interaction. The focus of all her work is facilitation of self-empowerment in all. Ellaeenah has been working in this field for over 2 decades, and her work includes extensive personal one-on-one work, seminars, workshops, and webinars too, as you can see now. She's a writer, having written for many publications, and speaker, and addresses many forums on diverse subjects ranging from work-life balance, time management, anger management, communication skills, to methods of emotional release, meditation, and spiritual consciousness. Ellaeenah has written an ebook entitled And Jade Fire Said, and co-authored a simple guide to Bach flower remedies titled Bach to a Healthy Life. For those who are intrigued, do know that we have her book on Bach flower remedies in the Jamnabai Narsee School library, and you're most welcome to borrow it from there when it is possible to do so. For those who may be intrigued based on my having introduced her, I will share her website and contact details through the chat feature. Please do look out for those. We will now listen to what Ellaeenah, with all her wisdom and experience, has to share with us. Do keep your questions coming in through the Q&A tool, and I will present them to her when the opportunity arises. Without any further ado, over to you, Miss.
Thank you, Sonali. Thank you very, very much. It's an absolute joy to be here, not only to address such an august gathering, but because you invited me and because you are moderating. And of course, everyone would know by that statement that Sonali was definitely one of not only the bright sparks, but definitely a very, very soft spot in my heart that's still there for Sonali. And it's been a relationship that has grown, it has evolved, and I'm happy to say it hasn't come to a halt just because Sonali left school. So when Sonali asked me to think of a subject that I would like to speak on, I instantly thought of any subject that would help children. A few days ago, when someone was asking me something online, I mentioned that I have two very large triggers. These are the buttons anyone can push in order to make me emotionally reactive. And one of these triggers is children. When I see that a child is coming to some harm, whether emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, it really riles me. And I have to consciously then move myself out of a state of reactivity into a state of balance, because I know that if I'm in a state of reactivity, I'm not going to be able to help the child. And that is why these subjects that I'm going to discuss today. But before going any further, I'd like to make one very, very pertinent confession. Whatever I know today has been the result of the many, many, many mistakes that I made as a parent, that I made as a teacher. I look back now, I regret those mistakes, but I have learned from them. I have evolved from them. I have seen those mistakes being repeated time and time and time again by other parents, by other teachers. And that is why I never come from a place of judgment, because I know I've been there and I've done that. May not be exactly the same things, but I've definitely erred both as a parent and as a teacher. But out of those mistakes has developed, has evolved this person that is now ensuring that her every move is towards empowering another person. And why? Because I've realized that all those mistakes that I made, I've realized that all those mistakes that people still continue to make, that adults still continue to make, come from a space of lack of self-empowerment. When we feel weak within ourselves, we get very, very emotionally reactive, and we take all the wrong decisions and genuinely create more conflict and more strife in our lives than we really need to. So let's start off with the definition of the word discipline. Many times when I have asked people what they believe discipline is, very often they come up with some kind of definition that will involve either the word or the concept of punishment. And this is exactly what I would like to bring up right at the start. To discipline is to teach or to impart a lesson in positive behavior, positive patterns, and positive emotional management. Let me repeat that again. Discipline is to teach or to impart a lesson to a child in positive behavior, positive attitude, and positive emotional management. It does not bring in neither the concept nor the word punishment at all. Punishment, on the other hand, is defined as an imposition or a penalty or a harsh action taken for an offense which is almost always criminal in nature. When one puts discipline and punishment together, do you see even any semblance of a relationship between these two? So if we wish to change our relationships with our children, whether we are parents, whether we are caregivers, whether we are teachers, the first shift has to be the complete eradication of this word punishment from our dictionaries. We have to eradicate this word punishment from our educational institutions. When you have understood that a punishment is an imposition or a penalty for an offense that is committed, generally of a criminal nature, instantly you will ask yourself, but when do kids commit something that is criminal in nature? And that's exactly what I'm getting at. Almost never. If they are not committing criminal offenses, then why are we treating them like criminals by giving them punishments? So let's change this word punishment to the word consequence. There is an action and there is a consequence. Now, if we shift this, we will actually be training, guiding, inculcating in these young, fresh minds the very, very significant aspect of self-responsibility. You and I, as adults, we know that our every action has a consequence. This is what we need to teach them when they're very, very young, so that as they grow up, they are able to self-discipline. There is no discipline more effective than self-discipline. So that's the first step we have to take. The second step that we have to take as adults is to manage our emotions. Come on, friends, you will admit that more often than not, when you are in that space of having to discipline a child or children, you are already in that space of annoyance, irritation, frustration, anger, or even rage. Now, if you yourself are in a state of uncontrolled emotion, how are you going to help this child learn a lesson? How often have we either said or heard someone say, I'm going to teach you a lesson? We say that almost as a threat. And it's not a threat, it is actually the truth. When a child errs in some way, you and I, as hopefully more mature adults, are here to help the child learn a lesson which the child obviously hasn't learned. Now, if I impose 3,000 lines to be written, or I ask the child to walk out of the class, or I ask the child to kneel, or I shout at the child so that his self-esteem is harmed, please tell me, what lesson is this child learning? Let me tell you that, in fact. This child is not learning the lesson you want him to learn. You might be wanting him to learn the lesson of punctuality, or politeness, or respect, or compassion, or focus. But when you've behaved out of a state that is filled with negative emotion, that child hasn't learned that lesson at all. Let me tell you what lesson the child has learned. The child has learned that you, as an adult, are unable to control yourself. The child has learned that you, as an adult, have buttons which they can press and trigger you to make them feel good. The child has learned that here is a person I can't really respect, because see the way this person is shouting and screaming in front of me. This person is not worthy of my respect. The child has learned not to trust you. Would you trust someone who cannot control their emotions? And if you can't trust that person, how do you expect the child to trust someone who, as an adult, is behaving in a manner that a tantrumy child might behave? The child also learns that here is a human connection that I should be wary of. So if it is a teacher or a parent or a grandparent or any other adult, where the child receives a threat of some kind, the child begins to learn, here is a person I must keep my distance from. Is this really what you want as a parent? Is this really what you want as a teacher? I know that your answer is no. We all want connection. So while disciplining our children, the three pillars that we have to keep in mind are respect, trust, connection. Before you take a step, before even one word comes out of your mouth, ask yourself these three questions. Will this add to the respect that I feel for this child and the respect that this child feels for me? Second question, will this build up a bridge of trust between the child and myself? Third question, will this forge a positive connection between me and the child? Will it strengthen the already existing connection? If your answer is a yes to all three questions, then please go ahead and take that action. If your answer is a no to even one question, withdraw from the situation till you are able to manage your emotions and return to that situation, I beg your pardon, a few minutes later. In those few minutes, learn how to manage your emotions. I know children can be very difficult. I know children can be sometimes impertinent. Of course, I know that. I'm not blind to that. But they are children. In a situation, who is the adult? You are. I am, not the child. And so who must take on the greater responsibility? You must. I must, not the child. So how do we manage our emotions in just those few minutes that we have? You see, guys, when we react, the area of the brain which is active is called the middle brain. Now, that middle brain is filled with emotional reactions. If you attempt to think or to rationalize or to make sense of a situation from that middle brain, it's not possible. The task, the function of the middle brain is to store emotion. It is also to store all emotional memory. So you know that now if you're reacting, you are functioning out of the middle brain. The important aspect here is bring yourself from the middle brain to the frontal lobe. Now the frontal lobe is that part of the brain which is most essential to all of us. The frontal lobe determines and influences communication, analysis, logic, clarity, speech, music, all of this is in the frontal lobe. Now, how do I shift from the middle brain to the frontal lobe? One great way to shift in just a few minutes is to play some music that you really enjoy and to sing along with it. That irritation, that anger that you felt a few minutes ago will start fading as you start moving from middle brain to frontal lobe. And you see, you don't have to do anything to move. As soon as you put on that music, as soon as you start singing, the brain knows which part of the brain needs to become activated. You don't have to do anything about it. So it activates the frontal lobe. As soon as the frontal lobe is activated, the emotional reactivity begins to go down. Another great way and an instant way. Guys, I'm giving you these instant tips because sometimes we need to address a situation in that moment. I can't take a week to settle down and then come back to the situation. These are all instant tips. The second way is Om chanting. Chant Om for a few minutes with your eyes closed. And you chant Om in such a way that your entire head seems filled with the sound of the Om, but also your entire chest and abdomen is filled with the sound. So it's a very deep and resonant Let it be deep, let it be resonant. Lock yourself away in a room a few minutes, 2 minutes of Om chanting, and you have moved from middle brain to frontal lobe. You can then go out and address that situation. As a long-term measure, if you find that you are a hypersensitive or a hyper-reactive individual, then you must start on a ritual of meditation and mindfulness that shall, over a long-term period, gradually shift you out from your persistent reactive mode into a mode that is calm and balanced. When you have to discipline a child, one thing you must remember, along with the respect and the trust and the connection, the fourth thing you have to remember is no harm. No harm. And I don't only mean physical harm. I know that the government of India has taken an amazing stand against that. And I'm really happy with that move that they made. But I am still shocked that there are still teachers who continue to use physical means as some way of their so-called punishment in spite of the government having banned it. What amazes me even more is when parents refuse to take a stand against this. When parents come to me for sessions along with their children, and they tell me about a certain thing that a school or a management or a teacher has done, and if I tell them, immediately go and report this, forget about it being not human, it's against the law. The parents will not agree to do that. Sometimes, shockingly, the parents say, you know, I think my child deserved this. And two, they often come back to me with, I can't possibly go back and tell the school or the parent because my child will be harmed even more. Unless we as a collective, as a community, together, adults, teachers, all of us, management, as a community, we ensure that we are not going to allow even one event where there is some harm done to a child to let it be. This will continue. A physical harm is easy to see. What is very difficult to see, and which I see on a regular basis when children and teenagers come to me for their sessions, is the emotional harm, is the mental harm, is the spiritual harm. Every time there is a so-called punishment, not a consequence, a so-called punishment, a child's self-confidence, a child's self-worth, and a child's self-esteem are very conclusively and gradually being shredded into tiny, tiny bits. No one has this right to do that to another. You do not have the right to bring down someone else's opinion of themselves. And how does this happen, you'll say? When a teacher stands up in class and near everyone makes fun of a student or tells the student how rude he is, that he is a liar, that you are a cheat, what do you really think is happening to the student? Of course, the student's self-esteem is coming down to an all-time low. And then you wonder why that student is being rebellious. Then you wonder why that student has withdrawn into himself and has depression. Then you wonder why that student is not interacting in a positive way with others, because his or her self-esteem has been torn apart. So we have to manage our emotions so that by example, the child learns to manage his or her emotions. You cannot tell a child, don't shout when you're angry, but you are shouting at the child at that very moment. What are you teaching that child? Remember, friends, discipline is a lesson. Be very careful what lesson you are teaching. And is it the lesson that you want to teach? So most times, if we are emotionally reactive, we tell the child what we don't want them to do. Don't tell a lie. Don't bring your books empty. Don't not do your homework. Don't talk in class. Don't. Who is telling the child what to do? Why do we believe that the child already knows it all? And if the child knows it all, then why are you sending the child for education? Why are you not immediately putting your child into your family business and saying, hey, run it, you know it all? Because you know that the child doesn't know it all. You know that the child needs an education, needs a structure. So if I were an architect and I have the plans, the structure, all laid out in my blueprint, but I tell the construction workers what they shouldn't do. Don't use steel over here, use iron. Don't pour it so deep. Make this, don't pour it so deep. Don't use steel. Don't do this. The worker is going to turn around and say, okay, but what should I do? And that's exactly what the child is thinking internally. What do you want me to do? When you tell someone what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do, it is a positive discipline measure. So tell them what you want, but don't bark at them. I want you to tell the truth next time. couldn't this have been said? I want you to tell the truth next time because I know that intrinsically you are an honest person. Now, hear that statement and hear the first one that I barked out. Which one would you respond to? Let us not judge a child by what the child has done in the past. Guys, let's be honest. If you and I were judged by everything we've done in the past, we would have no friends left. Let's be honest. Let's not judge any child by what they've done in the past. I remember the incident of a child who came to me when I was the 9th standard teacher. He came from the 8th. Now, he had a history of misdemeanors right from standard 4 to standard 8. And when he came into my class, there was not a single teacher who didn't come up to me and said, Mrs. Daruwala, you take care of this guy. Huh? He is a piece of work. He's horrible. I don't know why our school hasn't thrown him out yet. When he came into my class, I had already decided that here was a child who was very aggressive, but he was aggressive because whether family or school had completely decimated all self-esteem, and he was very strongly trying to get attention. So the first day in class, I made him class monitor and I gave him certain tasks. And I said, these tasks are your responsibility because I can see how responsible you really are. And I'd like these done. And sometimes due to my other administrative duties, if I am unable to come into class, here is a book and I'm going to shortlist a few questions. I'd like you to take over as the teacher and I'd like you to ensure that these exercises are being done in my absence. In 6 months, this so-called aggressive, angry, horrible boy had changed. Then came the end of the year when he had to stand for a school post. And he came to me with his application to stand for deputy games captain because he was very, very good. Not deputy, I'm sorry, games captain. He was very good at sport. I looked at him and I tore up that application and his face just fell. And I said, no, you will not stand as games captain. You're going to stand as head boy of the school. He was wondering whether he had heard me right. And he said, me? And I said, yes, you. You are standing as head boy. That's the only application I will accept from you. I won't accept any other application. He turned out to be one of the best head boys our school had ever had. In fact, his story of transformation was one of the articles that I wrote for Chicken Soup for the Indian Soul. This is what happens when you refuse to listen to someone else's opinion, when you refuse to listen to someone who's prejudging because of what the child has done in the past. You have to recognize such a child's talents. And you've got to ensure that you force the child very subtly to use those positive talents rather than the negative attitude. When he is doing that, ensure that you praise for even the smallest thing. Remember, this child has been blamed for everything he's done and not done. Now shift to praise. Praise works better than any other stick or rod could. Constantly praise that child. That self-esteem is getting built up again and again and again. just as neither you nor I like, we are not bad people, are we? But we do, some of our behavior patterns are bad. It's the same with the child. The child is not bad. Why are we labeling this child as liar and cheat and horrible and whatever? Why are we not focusing our attention on the behavior and making it our responsibility to help the child change? When we constantly demean the child is going to be angry. You see, guys, anger comes from acute fear, anger comes from acute sadness, and anger comes from acute shame. When you see an angry child or an angry adult, because remember, an angry child grows into an angry adult if no help is given, ask yourself how you can help this person deal with fear or sadness or shame. Do not misjudge anger as aggression. There are those who will aggressively show their anger, but there are those who withdraw, who refuse to talk to people, who cannot concentrate on their work, who will be slipshod in their presentations, who will not be able to interact. They could also be very, very angry within themselves, but they're not expressing it. Remember, what you are seeing of a child in school is only 10% of the truth. You are not living that child's life in his family environment. So don't be quick to judge, and definitely not punish. I also want you to understand the child's role today with all of this coronavirus. I was just talking to Sonali right now. Every day I'm reading that today Maharashtra or Mumbai has hit a new spike of corona cases, that so many more have been added, that Maharashtra somehow is not able to bring it under control. Think of what the child is going through. The child is hearing the parents' stress about no money, no work, no business. The child is wondering whether there will be an exam or no exam. The child is wondering about his or her education. But the child may not be telling you. But this worry is a constant factor in them. Sit down with them and talk to them. Listen to what the child has to say. We are, as adults, the commonest statement we make is, listen to me. I'm your mother. I'm your father. You listen to me. But sometimes the child wants to say, but listen to me as well. What you demand from the child is what you must be able to give. If you are demanding honesty, are you being honest? If you are demanding respect, are you being respectful? These are very valid questions that all of us as adults must ask ourselves very regularly. We have to catch ourselves doing things and having patterns of behavior that are actually very negative. Schools and parents have to address this growing phenomenon of anger in children. And it's not only in teenagers. So don't write it off as, oh, this is just teenage angst. No, I'm talking about little ones. When a 4-year-old child comes to me with eczema, that is a very deep set anger that the child is unable to release. When there are ulcers, when there is asthma, all of these are symptoms of deep set, unresolved, unexpressed anger. schools and parents have to make a note of it. They cannot brush this under the carpet anymore, because our children are harming themselves very often without the parent knowing. When the child comes to me, the child shows me cuts the child has made on certain parts of the body, made them so cleverly that the parent is unable to know. Why is the child cutting himself or herself? Because somewhere the child has to release his anger, her frustration. And the more that people tell the child that you are useless, you are this, you are that, and the other, the child begins to hate himself or herself, and you don't even know that. And then when we read a sad, sad news about a suicide, we ask the question, why would the child do this? I'm going to ask another question to you, not why would the child do this? Why did we as adults fail this child? Why did we fail this child? We failed to make this child feel positive about himself. We failed to make this child express their anger. We failed to talk and communicate with the child. We failed. Challenging times like the coronavirus that we are all facing right now are splendid opportunities for growth. Sit down with the child and make the child aware of the talents the child has. And let the child explore those talents just now, when the child has the time and those ridiculous number of tuitions are not burdening the child. Talk to the child. Use this opportunity to sit down and have family nights and cook together and laugh together and, have a little fun and dance and play music together. This is the time for relationships to bind. This is your relationship asset that will last you and the child forever. Make the child aware of his or her core competencies, not what he is not good at. What is the child good at? And accept that about your child. Your child might be creative and musical, whereas the whole family is medically inclined. Your child might have no interest whatsoever in finance and business. Your child might be a homosexual or a lesbian. And my question to you is, so what? I've had a child sitting with such a look of despair when the mother is telling me, all this homosexuality is rubbish, it's just a phase, he's going to grow out of it. It's not a phase. This is who your child is, but it doesn't make him any less beautiful. It doesn't make him any less human. Accept and welcome every child's uniqueness. Why do you want your child to be a picture of you, a clone of you? Do you know what I used to do when I was 9th and 10th standard teacher and we'd have open day? And if certain children had done very, very badly in their exams, I would tell those parents, please return tomorrow and bring your school report card to me tomorrow. Bring your school report card. Because if I see an excellent report card, then yes, along with you, I will find fault with this child. But if I don't see an excellent report card, then you and I will sit together and help this child to improve. You see, we forget all our flaws. We forget that we were not great as students, may not have been. We forget that we may not have excelled. We forget that we might have actually bunked school and gone off. We forget all of that when suddenly we become parents or teachers. But let's not forget who we were, so that we give our children the permission to be who they are. And give them the permission to feel. You and I feel angry so often. They have every right to feel angry. They have every right to express their anger. But you and I, as adults, have to help them how to express their anger, not keep quiet. But yes, I can see that you're very angry. I can see that you're very upset. Together, let us find a solution. Let us see how we can move beyond your anger. This is what disciplining is. It's when you make the child understand that what he does, there is a consequence, and therefore there's positive self-responsibility. Yes, Sonali.
I didn't mean to interrupt you with the sudden appearance on the video.
No, I'm glad you did, because I can talk on this subject for hours ad nauseum.
And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the attendees that we'd love to listen to you for hours. But I see a lot of questions have already streamed in.
Yes, I'd love to take those.
Would you like to share any concluding thoughts before I present them to you?
Yes, actually, I'd just like to read some words from one of my most favorite writers of all times, and that's Khalil Gibran. And he writes about children. And although I know it, but I'm still not going to take a chance that I'm going to misquote him, so I'm going to read it. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. So please give your children the permission to be who they are. Let them be proud of who they are, and you be proud of who they are. Thank you very much.
That was beautiful. Gibran is a particular favorite of mine too. And I wonder whether you planted that seed somewhere while I was growing up.
It's very likely.
I'm going to just get right to presenting the questions.
Yes.
We have somebody who would like to ask you about her daughter who is 7 and has acute eczema. But the parent says that she's a very happy child, always smiling, always happy, always very expressive, and receives a lot of love. How can it be that this child is undergoing some problem?
Please understand that eczema is a skin outbreak only when there is an acute stress within the child. So if you are convinced that there is not anger within the child, please look for something that the child might be fearing, or if the child feels some kind of threat, constant threat in the environment. Please understand, children are very quick to understand what we as adults want. And if they know that mom or dad or a teacher would not want me talking about it, they won't talk about it. So one of the ways of understanding what that child is going through at such a young age is art therapy. Look for a good art therapist. The child is able to express so much of the subconscious through art. Not an art teacher, guys, not an art class, an art therapist.
Okay, here's another one about a parent looking for guidance as far as handling a stubborn child is concerned.
First of all, give yourself a pat on the back and be thrilled that you have a stubborn child, because your child is a leader. Now is your challenge. It's not the child's challenge, it's your challenge. How will you groom this leader? How will you help this leader to understand what leadership truly is? Give the child the opportunities to lead. Make the child join classes or sports events where the child can actually play a frontal role. the more the child has the opportunity to express who he really is, the less will he try this negative way of getting his way. Stubbornness is my desire to get my own way. Why? Because I am a leader. I don't want to follow. One of the things a leader has to learn is, why is it important to follow sometimes? This child must never be punished. You have a child who is intelligent, who is bright, and who is a leader. This child needs positive disciplining, not negative. It will never work as negative disciplining. He'll just get more stubborn.
Thank you. We have a parent who says that he or she is looking for ways to be with the child, bring the child up in a way that is positive without negative peer pressure or negative conditioning, but feels that terrible parenting burnout is affecting the child and his or her relationship.
And this is so common, and my heart goes out to you. And all of us have experienced this time to time, especially when there is a stubborn child. Then parental burnout is very, very common, because you are trying to do your level best and the child is not responding. It's only because the child is not responding to you because you haven't done what the child will respond to. So when you want to bring up a child in a positive environment, there are some things that are very, very simple to do. Very simple to do. Family nights is very important. People do not understand the importance of family nights. They think, what is the big deal? Families getting together and chatting or watching a movie or playing a game. Oh, it's very important. Instead of watching a silly movie, why don't you in fact have a game night? You will be able to see whether your child knows how to accept defeat. You'll be able to see whether your child needs to learn compassion, whether your child needs to be a little more truthful. These are all vital lessons. So have regular game nights. Go out regularly with your child. In fact, when there are slightly difficult children, I tell the parent, never talk about the behavior pattern. First of all, never talk that the child is bad, because the child is not. It's the behavior pattern. But don't even talk about the behavior pattern at home. Take the child for a coffee, take the child to chapati, take the child for a walk. At that time, when the child is happy to be with you, gently bring up this subject for not more than 5 to 7 minutes. The child must not, please remember, your children are far wiser than you are, far wiser than we are as adults. They will pick up instantly that, mom or dad wants me to go out because now I'm going to get a lecture. Oh no. Bring up that subject. If you want, rehearse it beforehand so that you speak positively, you speak it succinctly, but 5 to 7 minutes, say what you need to, move on to another topic. Make it part of the outing, not the reason for the outing. You'll find that it works for you. You'll be more relaxed. The child will be more relaxed.
That was very good advice. I'm not a parent myself, but I'm trying to think of when I can use that to my advantage at some point.
Do you know, I used to do that with my students in school. I would ask them, because I was fortunate enough to have an office. So I would say, why don't you come and we both have lunch together? What have you got from home today? Oh, that sounds very nice. I want to share your lunch with you. And we just chat. And then it became a regular thing. When they wanted to chat, they'd come in and say, Miss, can we come in? And so, of course, it's lunch break. This office is yours. Just sit and chat.
Thank you for that. I'm compelled to share here that at Jamnabai Narsee School, you're familiar with the kind of structure we have, within the school campus, such that all our classes are within a foyer.
Hmm.
So the various divisions that make up, let's say, grade 6 hexagonal shape, and we have a foyer coordinator at the center of it all who kind of controls and coordinates things that are happening in her foyer. And what you just shared brings to mind that's pretty much the culture right here at Jamnabai as well, where students come up to the foyer coordinator or to the teachers who may be right there in the foyer during break times, and carry on with chats over a meal or a snack.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that kind of approachability does really work wonders.
And when we shift our labels, Sonali, that works. As I said, shift from punishment to consequence. Somehow in the Eastern culture, the word teacher has been misconstrued as this beyond God kind of figure who can never be wrong. Let's shift that to guide. Let's shift that to mentor. Let's move away from labels like supervisor, has controller. Who are you controlling? You're not controlling anyone. You are mentoring a soul who lives within a physical body. You're mentoring. You are not controlling. You're not teaching. That soul already knows everything it needs to learn. So guide, mentor.
Yeah, that's a beautiful reminder of that slight shift in perspective,
Yeah.
which makes everything else fall in so
Everything.
beautifully.
The whole culture will change.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. We have a principal who constantly reminds us of exactly this term about how she is a mentor, and in turn, we all are for the people around us.
That's right.
And I totally agree with you about how much we constantly get to learn from our students. So, in a way, without them intending to be, they are our mentors too.
Absolutely.
We have a parent who would like to ask about any tips that you may have for single mothers trying to bring up children, and particularly increasing the bond that they share with them.
That's a tough one. Whether it's a single mother or single father, single parenting is far more challenging than parent. But sometimes interestingly, I have found that a single parent is actually a more blessed state than two parents who just don't get along with each other. So when parents come to me and say we are sticking on with each other because of our children, I tell them, please don't. Please don't. In fact, very respectfully part ways. So the first thing that a single parent, if there is a divorce situation, must ensure is that you never negatively influence the child about the other parent. Please remember, you have your axe to grind with your husband or your wife. Your child doesn't. For your child, that parent is still a parent. Don't try and get a negative attention from your child by talking against the other parent because the child happens to be with you. Secondly, in a situation of single parenting, what happens is that the child is forced to grow up far quicker than any other. He or she must become more mature, must take on more responsibilities. In subtle ways, remind yourself that your child is still 6 years old, still 7 years old, still 14 years old. And don't say, now you're a big boy, now come on, you have to do this for yourself. No, the child is still a child. So give the child the space to be a child, even though there would be responsibilities that the child is taking, which another child may not be taking. Third, yes, you are very busy. Yes, you have to support your child. You've got to take care of the house. You've got to go out and work. I accept all of that. And it's very challenging, completely on board with you on that. But make time for the child in this way. So you have to come home and cook. Make that your we time. So tell the child, here, sit on this platform while mom is cooking and tell me all about your day. And not only tell me all about your day, you share a part of your day with the child. Not a stressful part of your day, a happy part of your day. So you will have to find opportunities like this to create we time.
Thank you for that. As I'm scrolling through the questions, I for things that you would have just sent in a request to be repeated, you will be able to watch a recording of this webinar that will be uploaded on the Jamnabai Narsee Education Series YouTube channel. So let's not use our time that we have left together in repeating a point. There are so many questions that need to be answered, and I'm afraid we are not going to be able to answer them all anyway. I'm going to pick from here questions that would benefit the larger community rather than, specifically
Yes.
to do with a particular parent's concern with her particular child. Like you rightly said already, everybody is unique, and I fully understand and appreciate the fact that our parents have all these concerns on their mind. Do look at the chat feature where I have shared Mrs. Daruwala's email address. Feel free to reach out to her if you need to.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, let me focus on presenting the last maybe 2 or 3 questions. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Great. So we have somebody who's commented that isn't insisting that a child should be thinking about, be conscious about his or her own action. Isn't it that could lead to the lowering of confidence in wanting to try new things?
Oh, that's a nice question.
Would there be
I love
like
that.
a fear of consequence of trying something?
It's about how you present it to the child. If you present it to the child of, you have to think about this action and then bear the consequence, whatever it is. Oh, that's such a negative way of bringing forth. You must present it. And that's what I mean. An adult has to first learn to manage their emotions. An adult has to first learn communication. If you present it to the child in a manner where responsibility is about taking an action, understanding what its consequences could be, and then doing it joyfully and fearlessly. Explain to your child what it is. And when you lay down consequences, not punishments, consequences, for children who are above 12, I recommend sit down with them and discuss. Okay, so if you haven't finished a school homework, what will be the consequence? And the child will come up to you and say, you know what, Mom, don't let me watch TV for 1.5 hours. At that time, let me watch TV only for an hour. So discuss with your children. Discussion is more important than barking.
So we have about 3-4 questions which largely, include the main concern about how do, as parents, how do we get our children to cut down on screen time? And as a teacher myself, I am a little surprised when parents tell me my child doesn't listen to me. You say something to him. So do you have any words of advice for both parents and teachers alike as far as this concern goes?
So first is acceptance. The most difficult acceptance is that your child is not you. And your child comes from a completely different generation. I mean, I am just amazed at how a 2-year-old kid will pick up an iPad and know exactly what to do and how to scroll. And I suddenly understand when they say technology is intuitive, because it's certainly not intuitive for me. I come from the generation of books and paper, and so I still need my paper, right? They don't come from that. So they are a different breed of the human race. So first of all, accept that. What you are objecting to is not only screen time, you're objecting to the mindless things that they watch on the screen, right? Use that screen time to introduce your child to something positive. So when parents used to come to me and say, Mrs. Daruwala, he refuses to read, I would say, but why are you insisting that he reads the book you read? Or why should he only read the Times of India? And I would look at the child and say, what do you love? He says, I love cricket. Would tell the child, go right now and buy him a book of the cricket greats of India and see how he sits and reads. You want him to read. That's the goal. You don't want him to read what you think you should read. So, right? So you may find Dickens fabulous, but he is saying, why must I read this dark, serious, sad stuff? So let the child be who they are. Also, discuss with your child, and you be open-minded. Discuss with your child the pros and cons of screen time. They are wise. They are wiser than you believe they are. And let them set their limits. If they set their limits, then with a little reminder, you just have to say, hey, remember you said 2 hours and your 2 hours is over? Could we switch it off now? And that will work.
Thank you. We have somebody who's just commented and shared that Mrs. Daruwala has been my teacher too, one of my most favorites as well. And I'm very happy to be seeing her again.
Wow, thank you.
I'll share the details of who that is with you later. And moving on. This is an interesting question. I'm not presenting it to you, but I'm taking the liberty of just quickly commenting on it before I present the next question. We have somebody who's asked about, we talk about children, but what about teachers who go through a lot of emotional pressure in school? When a teacher is helpless, can't approach anyone. Please do feel free to answer that if you'd like, but I'm going to just go ahead and say that in our schools at Jamnabai Narsee, we have a full-fledged counseling department. We have teachers who are more than welcome to approach a professionally qualified person if their mental and emotional health needs to be taken care of. But then, of course, like our speaker has also shared already, we are all mentors in a way. So reaching out for a friendly shoulder to cry on, to express what you're feeling, to sometimes just say in class, I'm not feeling too good today. Something's bothering me. Sorry if it's upset. Sorry if it's having a ripple effect on the way I'm talking to you right now. Just that awareness makes such a world of difference.
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead and add anything.
No, I think that's perfect. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much about that. One last question, maybe. I'm trying to pick one that would benefit more people than just the one individual trying to ask. Okay. This seems to be a common concern in many institutions and homes. How do we guide and mentor children to respect each other?
Respect can never be taught. Respect can never be taught. Respect can only be taught through example. You cannot open up a moral science book and read out some completely inane chapter and set a test on it and expect that your child has learned about respect. If your child is not respecting someone, we have to ask ourselves, what examples are we setting? Is the family environment conducive to setting that example of respect? Is the school conducive to setting that example? Sometimes, just as we say there's always that one bad apple, 10 teachers might be great and very respectful, but one is not. You know, guys, the sad thing is the human mind, the human brain is conditioned to focus on the negative. Why? Because that's how we take care of ourselves. If we focus on the fear and on the negative, we will not go there, right? So the brain is trained for that. So that child will not learn from the 10, will learn from the 1. So look around at the environment and ensure that every environment that the child is exposed to is a positive environment.
Thank you very much. We have more questions, and like I mentioned to you, owing to paucity of time, we wish we could have spent the whole day talking to you and seeking further guidance, but maybe some other time we can create that opportunity. But for now, let me share a few thoughts in winding up this session. The positive disciplining measures that you have spelled out, Mrs. Daruwala, have served as beautiful reminders of mindfulness that adults in a child's life really need to practice. At the Jamnabai Narsee School, we hold in high esteem the ideas you have endorsed today. Punishment is a word we consciously refrain from using, since we understand that what is most apt is exemplary behavior and offering solutions rather than pointing out problems. Thank you for sharing examples from your experience so generously that we can be continually inspired by them. Praise works better than anything else. We all know how we feel when someone praises us. So then offering praise every chance we get should be a given, not just to the children in your lives, to everyone you have around you. I've learned from experience that the ones who may have anger issues that become evident at school are the ones most in need of some love and extra attention. Mrs. Daruwala, you have been, as I always like to call it, this quintessential trait of yours. Those of us who've been through schooling with you as our mentor can vouch for that. And I see how you keep up the commitment by helping innumerable individuals and families the way you do now. And I would like to express abundant gratitude to you on behalf of the Jamnabai Narsee schools for your guidance here this evening.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, we must express our gratitude to Mr. Suraj Jairaj in particular, and of course the rest of the management at the Narsee Monji Educational Trust for facilitating these fabulous webinars that have continually through this period of lockdown helped us in nurturing our minds, bodies and souls while we are safe at home and not going overly crazy wondering about what's going to happen next. In the moments that we may get a sense of despair, these webinars have helped us by offering the kind of guidance that will help us navigate the waters that lie ahead. Thank you to all the people who helped put these together, the ones behind the scenes that you may not see or know of. We have something exciting coming up next on Tuesday. Do look out for those details that will be shared with you soon enough. Bye for now. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.